key modern railways. In-depth railway news.
Hello and welcome to the latest Modern Railways podcast, the third one for the July 2020 edition. Now, we thought we'd take a little walk outside today, and people have been saying, are you getting too worked up with this TV business? Well, I'm not at all influenced by any television show that I could think of. I've just come along as I normally would for a little walk in the country with my Bradshaw's Guide. And opening my Bradshaw's Guide today, we are going to go to Nottingham and have a quick word with Philip Sherratt, the editor, who's about to be hit by a tram.
Hello, thanks Ian, and Ian's encouraged me to get out of the house and get alongside some track. So I live right next to our tram system here in Nottingham, the Nottingham Express Transit. So I've come out here. Fortunately, I've tried recording a whole video from out here, but it's a bit windy and you might struggle to hear me. So I'm going to get back into the warm and record the main bit of the video there. But hopefully, a bit of a change of scenery, and maybe we'll be able to do somewhere different next month. But right now, we'll cut back inside for the rest of my segment. Right, I'm now safely back in the warm and out of the wind, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me clearly, and I'll talk you through a bit about some of the features in the July issue of the magazine. So we've done a bit of a focus on HS2 this month. You might recall back in April, the government issued the notice to proceed for HS2, which means that the main building works of the route between London and Birmingham, London and West Midlands, I should say, can properly get underway. So we've looked at what's happening with that next, and I've spoken to Mike Lyons, who manages the civils contracts on HS2, and he's told me a bit about what are the key milestones, in particular tunnelling, and the aim is to start building the tunnels next year, boring those through the Chilterns, massive 10-mile long tunnels. Using tunnel boring machines. And there's a lot of preparation going on, how everything's being managed during COVID, and also some of the organisational changes at HS2 as that project transitions from a planning one to a delivering one. And connected with that, when notice to proceed was issued by the government, they published a revised business case for HS2, and that contained a lot of information about potential service patterns, what the services might look like on HS2, and also how all the trains you take off the West Coast Main Line onto HS2, what you use that West Coast Main Line capacity for. So William Barter, who's an operations expert, has done some analysis for us this month, and he doesn't quite think that it all makes sense. And you can see his view on it along with lots of the diagrams from the business case in the magazine. Also this month, following on from Roger Ford's Informed Sources column last month, where he talked about the traction decarbonisation network strategy that Network Rail is putting together, and how that's likely to recommend electrification as the key means of decarbonising the railway. This month we've got a feature from David Shires, who edits Rail Engineer magazine, and he set out to devise a map saying which lines are the busiest and therefore should be our priority for electrification. So in the magazine you'll be able to see his map saying which lines we should definitely electrify under all circumstances, which are sort of possibles, which are less likely, and which might see battery trains, for example, as an alternative. So that's a quite interesting analysis, which I'm sure you'll find of interest. Beyond that, in the magazine, our usual news reporting, a lot of stuff obviously on the ongoing COVID crisis, and our clarion call in our editorial is we need to get passengers back onto trains, because there's a lot of negative messaging out there at the moment, and we need to turn that round and start encouraging people to use trains again, and we need a marketing campaign to start that off pretty soon, is our view. So you'll be able to read that in our Rail Talk editorial. So that's a bit about the magazine. Hopefully you'll find it a bit easier to get hold of it, as the restrictions are easing, shops are opening back up again, but it's always available online through the website, and you can subscribe there as well. So I hope that's of interest, and I'll hand back to Ian.
Thank you, Philip. Plenty on HS2 there, and that's one reason we're here in a field just outside Derby. because a number of fields outside Derby will be dug up for HS2, and it's not this particular field, but a field's a field, isn't it? Who cares? And we want this field because it's got trains in the background. So, obviously, if I was in the mainstream media, I would be standing outside one of the cottages that has to be knocked down and asking the owner whether they thought HS2 was a good idea. However, we're not the mainstream media, and we're standing in a perfectly innocent field, which is all very well, but would look a lot better with a high-speed line going through it, in my humble opinion. And obviously now you want to hear from the main man, and we're just going to need to press this button, and then we will start up Captain Deltic. So now...
Something I've discovered over the years is that every now and then it's worth reviewing developments in a particular topic where you've been covering it, say, for 2 or 3 years, because bringing it all together in one article means that you sometimes get the situation where the result is greater than the sum of the individual parts. This is certainly the case with train leasing, where there have been major developments since 2016, which I've reported in informed sources as they happened. But this month I've gone back and reviewed and brought together all of the various contracts for train leasing placed in the last 4 years, and done my usual analysis, spreadsheeting, tables and so forth. And this emphasises the revolution that's taken place. Previously, all the rolling stock was ordered by the original 3 rolling stock companies, and there was barriers to entry for new firms. But in 2016, we had the first order placed under a new approach known as the special purpose vehicle. What this is a company set up to lease trains with the funding provided by pension companies and the like, who obviously want a steady return on their investment, and since the 2008 economic collapse, have found it very difficult to find a reasonable return on their investments. What the analysis shows is that the rolling stock market has changed totally, and of the 4,000 odd vehicles ordered in the last 4 years, 2/3 of them were ordered by these new SPV companies, leaving the Roscoes out in the cold. Obviously, the key to the SPV is the fact that the trains are going to stay with the operator through a number of leases, and that is called stickiness. Will the trains stick there? And that was a good approach, but now we've got coronavirus, the situation could well change, so I analysed that too. Also this month, I continue the ongoing saga of rail replacement coaches. As you know, this broke last September when the legal advice said that rail replacement coaches would have to comply with the passenger service vehicles accessibility regulations. This, of course, caused a furore because the Minister, first of all, gave an extension from the deadline of 1 January of a month. Then he extended it to April, and now he's had to extend it to the end of this year. But the Rail Delivery Group published its pathway to compliance after last month's column went to press, and it's a sturdy piece of work. I've reviewed it in this month's column, and what it really emphasises is that this is not a railway problem. This is a coach industry problem, of which the railways are a small subset. So I cover that in considerable detail. There's also an original suggestion that perhaps coaches might be acquired by the operator of last resort from a firm that's gone broke following the recession. Finally, in Tin Watch, which is really just a table of how reliable trains were in the last operating period, I try to add value each month by a bit of analysis related to the statistics. And this month I've looked at the number of delay minutes the new trains are delivering. In the Golden Spanners, we have a bronze spanner for the fleet with the fewest delay minutes per incident. This is not a third prize because delay minutes are what the passenger really feels. Anyway, I've analysed the delay minutes produced by the new fleets, and it's produced some counterintuitive and optimistic statistics, which I think you'll also find interesting. Well, that's all for this month, and I'll leave you to see the magazine when it comes out later this week.
Right, thank you, Roger. Next up, a few words from James Abbott, who's down at his local station. Over to you, James.
Hello, James Abbott here. I'm at my local station, Ashurst, on the border between Kent and East Sussex. This is the Uckfield branch line, and even though we're deep in the heart of Southern Territory, there is no third rail here. So Ian Walmsley's item in Pan Up in the July Modern Railways, proposing electrification of the diesel work gaps on the southern system, I find of particular interest. So here comes a Southern 171 bound for London. So it's just been crossed by another 171 from London. So these diesel bad boys are set to go to the East Midlands, but we don't know what's going to replace them here yet. Here's a 2016 report on Southern. Chris Kidd recommended electrifying this branch on the 25 kV overhead system with use of dual voltage units and a depot at Crowborough, south of here. Another idea that's been talked about is third rail battery hybrid trains as a possible replacement train when these turbos go to the East Midlands. But it's interesting to note that Northern is going off the idea of battery hybrid EVs for the Windermere branch, arguing that you don't want a bespoke mini fleet hauling heavy batteries around for long stretches under the wires. Far simpler just to pull the finger out and electrify the 10 miles of the branch. Similarly here, wouldn't it be easier to just install third rail on the 25 diesel miles south of Hurst Green and use the standard Southern fleet of DC EUs on this route? Let's get a shot of these polluting diesels on this route for good.
Thank you, James. That leads me on to my Pan Up column. So, in Pan Up for the July edition, I'm talking about the third rail network. And restrictions being what they are, I'm not going to go down and get filmed by the third rail network. The thing with third rail is it's banned, or extensions of it are banned by the ORR, Office of the Rail Regulator, by what they call their presumption against further extension of the system. Now, that means that when we want to fill in the last bits of the Southern Railways electrification schemes, we end up coming to hydrogen and batteries and things, which really would effectively lock in performance at about 1950s levels. And I don't think that performance in 2050 should be the same or worse than 1950. And so it seems obvious to me that we need to fill in these last bits of electrification. But when the ORR has got a document that says you almost certainly won't get a safety case for doing that, then that creates a problem. Now, when we look at the safety statistics, we find that they don't actually support the ORR's position. Having said that, when I looked again at the safety statistics, I thought, Well, this isn't really in line with what I think is happening, because I know quite a few people, I've spoken to quite a few people who've had a belt off the juice rail and lived to tell the tale, or probably more appropriately have not told the tale, because they've been doing something they shouldn't have been doing in a place they shouldn't have been, not followed the right procedure, so they don't report it. So consequently, the safety statistics for the third rail actually are probably worse than they're recorded. Still, I've looked again at that, and you'll get the rare opportunity to see me change my mind in print, which I'm pleased to say doesn't happen very often, but it has happened this time. Also, in Pan Up this month, we've got a look inevitably at seating, where I've revisited the issue of a new seat for the HS2 trains and said, well, what did we like? One of the train operators said, well, it's all very well saying you don't like modern seats, but what seats do you like? Well, having said that, it's quite difficult to say because you're not allowed to make the seats in the way that we used to make them that were comfortable. However, we could make a more comfortable seat. It's just that it's a bit more expensive than what we would do normally, because normally people just buy the cheapest seat. So when I asked a few other people on Facebook, they said, well, we like the Intercity 70 seat. Now, we're not allowed to make the Intercity 70 anymore because it doesn't conform to modern safety standards. But what we could do is to run the similar process to develop a new seat. And I'm suggesting what we should do is make an Intercity 20 seat, suitable for 2020. Well, that's about it for this month's podcast. I hope you've enjoyed that. Made a change coming outside, didn't it? And as for next month, or as Mr. Portillo would say, coming up next time we have, well, I've absolutely no idea. Bye for now. I see. Unlike Michael Portillo, I arrived just after the train has gone past.
Visit www.keymodernrailways.com for more interesting and essential information about the British Railway Network.